M22 trapped in a love triangle with F20 and F27, I told Lee, no strings attached while gathering flashbacks of her betrayal. Now she's threatening to expose me, and I'm stuck between chasing after my guilt or moving on with Amari. Can I ever escape this emotional chaos? In high school, I was known to be a playboy because of my behavior with women, and many of them pointed out that I resembled one. I come from a war zone, and the notion of trusting people who are not my blood relations does not scare me, it terrifies me. So you can imagine how I would be closed off with the people who love me. I had many friends, or I would refer to them as connections, and always ensured they did not learn too much about me. The playboy claims were not unfounded. I was indeed a playboy, and to be honest, I still feel like one. Every girl I ever dated, I made sure to tell them that there were no strings attached, and I never experienced an issue when they grew bored and left me. That was until I met this one girl. In school, she was infatuated with my friend. She always wanted to ensure he was okay, told everyone she loved him, and chased after him even though he was rude to her. When I became friends with her, I genuinely felt sympathy for her and envy toward my friend for having someone who cared for him, despite him pushing her away. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit, I started a small business that required me to be in the car almost all day delivering products. During that period, I had not been in touch with her much, and if she ever called, it was to ask about my friend or how he was doing. One day, however, she called, and when I informed her that I did not know where he was, she responded, "Oh, I don't care, I just wanted to check on you. Did you eat today?" That was the first time a girl asked such a specific question, and it made me feel good. We had a brief conversation, and then she texted me around 6 a.m. saying she couldn't sleep. So I went and picked her up, got her something to eat, and we caught up. From that day forward, she was always with me in the car, texting my customers, ensuring we had something to eat, and just being there for me. We began hooking up after a move she made, but my old habits led me to tell her there were no strings attached. Time passed, and everything was going well until one day my friend discovered our secret, and suddenly he asked her out. Then he requested that she be with him. The friend group I was part of was always jealous of the girls I brought around or even those they knew but chose to be with me. After that, she vanished from my life, following a fantastic night we had just before her disappearance. Later, I learned that she had known she was going to start dating him that night, and still decided to be intimate with me. I fell into depression. I never reached out or attempted to persuade her to stay with me. She had made her choice, and I am not the type to chase. I was always alone and started smoking marijuana, something I had always opposed, while my friend kept flaunting his relationship with her to me. He would share the hotel room where she lost her virginity in the group chat. I never intended to take her virginity, even though she asked, as I understood it was wrong for her. He would tell my friends, "See, I told you he is not special. I took the girl who was with him, all that behind his back." Knowing how violent I could be, I grew up as a boxer and used to teach them how to throw a punch if they ever came to my gym. A few months later, I decided to hook up with her best friend, a foolish decision, which I succeeded at, but I was trying to fill the void she left by finding any girl and could not. One day, she texted me, needing a ride, and like a fool, without thinking, I went and picked her up, just to drop her off to my friend and witness her be with him. Then she asked her best friend to stop hooking up with me, and I had no issue with that. Until her best friend came back, apologizing a week later, but I didn't really care. Her best friend was in love with a man who abused her, and I was just a nicer guy, so she liked hanging out with me, but there were no strings attached whatsoever. I understood that, and it felt like a give-and-take relationship, which was fair. One day we went to a party, just the three of us, her best friend and me. She got drunk and started being overly affectionate with me, while I was simply there to care for them since I do not drink and these parties can be quite chaotic. Her best friend grew jealous and decided to talk to another guy. Being the kind of person I am, I whispered in her best friend's ear not to call me again. I cut her off that night. For some reason, her best friend threw a tantrum, as if she was in love with me or something, which was amusing. During the party, with around 15 people in one room, everyone began discussing how I hooked up with two people present, her and her best friend, and they acted awkwardly. At one point, she said something peculiar, "I won't post my boyfriend until he starts going to the gym." The guy she left me for had become obese. I mean, extremely overweight, and she started making fun of him. I figured she was done with him but didn't want to leave because of her comfort zone. A few weeks later, she began calling me more frequently just to check on me, and ultimately she left the guy she had chosen over me. At that point, I began to spiral. We started hanging out again daily, and essentially she wanted to be more than just friends. I made it clear that this would not progress because of her prior betrayal, which she insists to this day was not a betrayal because I never expressed my feelings clearly. She had a point. I continued going out with her and we started falling in love with each other. Once I recognized this, I became very immature. I would try to leave her about 2 to 3 times a month, during which she would plead with me not to go and even threaten to harm herself if I left. I have spent long nights with suicide hotline operators when she sent me a picture of a handful of pills. I felt as if she were my little girl, whom I could not have. not only because of her betrayal but also due to her manipulative nature. She was conversing with numerous men in her direct messages while begging me to be with her and literally chasing me down in her car, forcing me to call the police on her to calm her down and make her leave me alone. She never left me alone. Every day she lost more and more self-respect pursuing me while I told her to go away. I couldn't manage my emotions and talking with her never changed anything. This cycle continued for a while until she became pregnant. That was incredibly difficult. I am someone who dreams of being a father and having someone I can show the world to, but we understood what had to be done due to our culture and traditions. She had an abortion and that was incredibly heavy on my heart and it weighed even more on hers. I began to act very cold whenever she cried to me about how she felt, simply telling her to hope for the best and to try to calm down without expressing my own distress. She thought I did not care about the abortion. I did care deeply, but having two panicking individuals was not helpful. She started to distance herself from me, yet we continued talking every day until I eventually told her that we needed to stop communicating because I could not deal with this uncertain future anymore. I met a Latina girl and took her out. The experience was different from all my previous relationships, as this Latina was 4 years older than me and I behaved differently. I was very honest with the girl who betrayed me, stating that she had to stop speaking to me because I was exploring my options, and I was too young to settle for what had occurred. I did not enjoy being with the Latina. She embodied everything I had wished for, but I always craved the highs and lows from the girl who betrayed me. For the sake of clarity, I will refer to the Latina as Amari and the girl who had the abortion as Lee. For 5 to 6 months, I was involved with both of them. Lee was aware of Amari, but Amari had no idea about Lee. One day, I looked at Lee and realized that she had endured all that pain and still did not let me go. I was shocked because her narcissistic personality should have left by now. From that moment on, I genuinely started to appreciate Lee, which led me to break things off with Amari and any other women I had been communicating with. Lee was not okay, she felt insecure and alone. I did my best to restore her confidence and we created wonderful moments afterward. I began to move past the issues of the past with her, even taking her out of the country because she always wanted to visit New York City and I made sure I accomplished that for her. Then I returned to my home country for a month, and during that time we were on FaceTime constantly and things seemed well between us. I even communicated that I was starting to feel better about our relationship, and I saw potential, a significant mistake. One day before returning from my trip, she started a massive argument with me over how I was able to cheat on her and how I am fundamentally a terrible person. We had discussed my actions previously, and she told me at that time that I was a good person, acknowledging that she saw the light in me and believed I would find my way back to her, which I did. When she confronted me, I was calm and blocked her, wishing her the best. But that was not the end. She continued to pursue me with calls from unknown numbers, repeatedly apologizing, although it wasn't entirely her fault. What occurred had to happen. She persisted in trying to be with me, but then she grew increasingly distant. She reconnected with toxic friends from her past and began associating with people she previously stated she did not want to emulate. Her current best friend is a gay girl exploiting an autistic man as her boyfriend just to stay in his house because her parents kicked her out, and she is 28 years old, 7 years older than Lee. I disliked that friend. She resembled the type of girl I would enjoy a night with and then never hear from again. I began warning Lee, but she immersed herself deeper into that friendship until one day I felt utterly dejected and isolated. She brought her friend around and the friend said hurtful things to me, leading me to walk away. Even after that, Lee relentlessly pursued me. So I eventually answered one of her calls and told her to leave me alone because I had reconnected with Amari, which I indeed did. Pandemonium erupted following that phone call. She came to my house and threatened to inform my family about everything, including sharing our intimate videos. She had a breakdown in my neighborhood, causing some of my neighbors to start recording us, which led to me being put on a watch list, as it is typical for a 53-year-old woman to be angry at a 511 young man, prompting the instinct to assume the man is at fault. I had nobody to manage her temper and I did something incredibly foolish. I called Amari and explained the situation and then she showed up. Lee ran toward Amari, resulting in a physical confrontation and I was caught in the middle, enduring most of the blows. Subsequently, the three of us sat in a car to talk. Lee began pleading with Amari to leave me alone, insisting that I was meant for her while sobbing uncontrollably. It pained me to see her like that, but her actions did not align with her words. Eventually, we all went home, and from that point forward, Lee refused to leave me alone. She would call me 100 times a day and show up at my house. I continued to pay her attention because I knew otherwise I would have to deal with hell. The troubling aspect was that she was no longer calling to be with me, but rather spamming my phone to say we could remain friends, claiming she no longer wanted to be with me. I felt completely broken, having lost a significant amount of weight, often smoking marijuana. One day I saw Lee's social media story, and she was at a party with a photo of her sandwiched between three guys while wearing traditional Pakistani bridal clothes. It was a bizarre event where everyone acted like brides and grooms. As soon as I saw that picture, I broke down and booked a ticket back to my home country, needing a break. I blocked her on everything and took the trip. She would send me emails expressing that she was in great trouble, and being the man I am, I would unblock her to call her. She would then ask me if I truly did not want to be with her, claiming there was another guy she was talking to, a 22-year-old police officer who was attractive, and if I continued to block her and act that way, she would get involved with him. My response was to hope he treated her well and to wish her the best. She then told me to be normal with her, insisting she would handle him for me, stating that she did not care about him and that she purely wanted me. I would tell her that I wanted her too, but we do not always get what we desire in this life. Upon returning home, things did not change. We would see each other once or twice a month for physical encounters and conflict. The last time we had sex was about a month ago, not far in the grand scheme of our story. The last time I saw her, she requested that I not pick up her calls if she rang, and to stay away from her even if she tried to reach out because she had exams and could not handle the stress of me in her life, even though I was always willing to step back. For the past 2 weeks, I stopped answering her phone calls from unknown numbers, although I would always wait for them and feel disappointed when she did not call. She also uses apps like Text Me to send me messages. 2 days ago, she spam called me like she used to in the past and messaged me saying, "I just want to know if you're still alive. I was outside your house at 12:30 a.m. and your car wasn't there. Who are you with?" I answered her call to express my frustration, but as soon as I heard her voice say my name, I broke down and cried for about 5 seconds. I then asked her how her test went, and she told me she panicked during it and did not perform as well as she had hoped, after which I reiterated that me avoiding her was beneficial. That night I could not sleep and sent her a message wishing her luck on her next test, which was the following day, alongside a cherished photo of us when I pushed a cart while she rode in it at Central Park. She appeared genuinely happy. She replied 8 hours later, saying you owe it to the picture, telling me she did not care about this test since it was online and she would cheat using ChatGPT. She then remarked that she looked dead in that photo. I responded, "No, you looked happy," to which she agreed, saying that was accurate. I then wished her a great weekend because she was being unresponsive and had indicated the night prior that she wanted to see me. However, 5 minutes later, she said she might go visit her cousins who lived 2 hours away, implying I might not see her. Therefore, sensing her regret from the night before when she called me, I reverted to my usual behavior of blocking her. It has been 24 hours since that conversation, and she has yet to call from a blocked number or anything. It feels pathetic that I await that call, despite not knowing if I want to pick up. I listen to sad music constantly. However, I have quit marijuana and redirected my energy toward building muscle. Amari and I talk, but I have not shared anything new with her following the physical altercation. I feel like a terrible person because I can sense that Amari is in love with me, yet I feel so empty inside. I do not even know why I wrote this. I am not someone who typically shares, but I have no one to talk to and I appreciate honest criticism, so please do not hold back. I recognize that I am not a good person and that lust drives me. I simply do not know what to do to feel better. I have felt this way for the past 6 months since returning from my first trip to my home country. I feel incredibly insecure, my confidence has crumbled, I have not maintained my connections, and I have nowhere to go or anyone to hang out with despite always enjoying that. Amari is always supportive of me, but the guilt consumes me. For context, I was 19 years old when all this began, Lee was 17, and Amari was 25. Am I insane for still wanting to be loved? If you made it this far, I sincerely thank you. You are a wonderful person for listening to a stranger's pain. Thank you, stranger. Story 2. I went through a roller coaster with a 37M who ghosted me after we finally got intimate. "I don't want to lose you then, maybe I'm too emotionally unavailable," were his last words to me. Now he's dating someone else and I'm left questioning everything. How do I move on? Note ages as of today, English is not my first language. Summary, I went through what I believe was an avoidant discard or breakup, and it has been very challenging to navigate. I feel it is taking significant time to process, and I would appreciate advice, feedback, or recommendations on how to manage the situation. Any suggestions on how to let go and move on in a healthy manner? Here is the full story and background. Back in 2023, when I was 30 years old, I began a postgraduate program and made some changes in my life, including exploring dating. I decided to open Tinder to meet new people, go on dates, and adopt a not attached to the outcome mentality. There, I met a man who was 36 years old at the time who asked me on a date and I accepted. We matched in November 2023 and had our first date in December. It was dinner and it was fine. He did not make any advance, paid the bill, and was overall pleasant. Honestly, I thought he was somewhat boring and did not feel a strong spark, but with a healthy mindset, it did not feel wrong either. I also wasn't particularly fond of the fact that he was bald, but despite that, I was aiming for something genuine and trying to connect with people on a deeper level. We continued chatting and were in contact almost daily, sharing memes, videos, and reels as we found we had a lot in common. Moving into 2024, he asked me out again in January, a month after our first date. This time it was a simple lunch and conversation. He still did not make any moves, which I found respectful and made me feel more comfortable around him. We had constant communication in the weeks leading up to the date, and we had a great discussion delving into deeper topics like mindset, family history, and societal views, finding a strong sense of compatibility. While I still felt no overwhelming spark, I began to genuinely like him and opened up more, getting into the mood of our connection. We kept chatting almost daily, through texts, calls, and video calls, which boosted my confidence as an introvert, allowing me to joke more. However, the conversation began to take a sexual turn. Before it escalated, I expressed my nervousness about this shift because I liked him. He reassured me that he liked me too, so I agreed to this new tone, which complemented our regular discussions. He seemed to maintain a balance between sexual conversations and our standard dialogues, which made me feel secure and not objectified. It is important to note that while we were exchanging spicy texts and pictures, we had yet to kiss or engage in any physical intimacy on previous dates. On our third date, which took place in mid-February, about a month after our last date and 2 weeks after our conversations had shifted, we started with a calm lunch and eventually ended up at a hotel where we had sexual intercourse. I recognized that the timing was unusual, especially since I received news of a family emergency. My grandmother had an accident while I was with him, prompting me to leave abruptly. Naturally, this was not well received by him. I called the next day to apologize and explain the situation. Initially, he accepted my apology but seemed to act strangely, which I attributed to understandable feelings. However, he did not sever communication with me. In the days that followed, we continued our usual chats and video calls, during which he mentioned he would be going on a trip with friends for a few days. I wished him well. Upon his return 10 days after our intimate encounter, he called me to inform me that he did not want to continue our relationship and was starting to officially date another woman with whom he felt more chemistry. However, he expressed a desire to remain friends. I was taken aback, and while I could rationally understand the reason behind his decision, delivering the news over the phone felt rude, cowardly, and hurtful. I do not have extensive experience with relationships or one-night stands, so I was genuinely shocked. It hurt deeply. Although I was aware he was conversing with someone else, I believed it was not at a stage comparable to ours before becoming intimate. Thus, the surprise and pain were significant, and I had to learn to cope with it, which I eventually did. Of course, our communication dwindled, and it became more about him sending occasional memes while I was less responsive. In May, 2 months later, he reached out again, trying to initiate conversation. I asked him what was going on, to which he replied that he had made a mistake and regretted his choice, stating he had broken up with the other girl and was wondering if we could try again. I was taken aback and said, "Are you aware that you essentially ended our relationship over the phone just 10 days after we became intimate?" He seemed remorseful. Hence, I allowed him to try reconnecting and see where it might lead us. During this period, he made some comments that made me uncomfortable, which I always addressed. He seemed to aim for compliments, but they felt inappropriate. For instance, he compared my lingerie to the other girls, claiming mine was prettier and I looked better. I had to point it out 1 or 2 times, and while they ceased, I noticed he seemed to improve his behavior. Our communication frequency increased from May onward. In August, however, I made a comment about us being friends that really bothered him. I stated we were just friends, but he insisted that our relationship was not solely for sex. He wanted romance too. At that point, we had not been intimate since our last encounter, although some remarks about sex arose in discussions. I let him know he could pursue a romantic connection, and he began to show more interest by asking me out again and rekindling daily communication. So I gradually leaned back into the connection. At the end of August, he celebrated his birthday and invited me to his apartment where we had sex again. This time, he did not vanish afterward and demonstrated more intention. We maintained daily conversations, he took me out on dates, and we spent time together, which felt fantastic. He even mentioned that I possessed everything he was looking for in a relationship. We enjoyed cooking dates together, and since he was moving, I helped by accompanying him to pick out furniture and providing my opinion, which he appreciated. By October, the security guards at his apartment were already familiar with me, and we passed a lot of time together. Additionally, my postgraduate classes were nearing completion, and he suggested we take a trip to the beach together. I was certain he would ask me to be his girlfriend officially, as we were already behaving like a couple, so I accepted the proposal. The trip occurred during the first week of November and was a mixed experience, not entirely negative but not excellent either. It is noteworthy that November marked 1 year since we first met. He mentioned he did consider asking me to be his girlfriend during our trip, but ultimately chose not to because he was uncertain. I sensed a distance between us there, though we were not fighting. I genuinely believed we needed to discuss some aspects, including how I initially felt friend-zoned and how that affected us moving forward. I genuinely thought I had forgiven him, but it still contributed to his uncertainty. He seemed troubled and uncomfortable, expressing frustration over my previous dating while I was in a friend-zoned situation, and was insecure about a specific man he had seen me with, even though I was no longer hanging out with that individual. During a discussion on our trip, he mentioned he was declining opportunities with other women because he was with me. I was also not actively dating or meeting other men at that time. Furthermore, his family coincidentally was also on the same trip, and I met his mother. During this trip, we both expressed love for each other, so I can retrieve a few good memories from it. However, afterward we returned in the same condition, still not a couple but almost there. Upon our return, the atmosphere felt strange again, but I acknowledged my feelings for him. I realized I liked this man deeply and wanted to be in a relationship with him. Therefore, I decided to remain committed. However, I wanted our connection to progress on mutual terms, not just his. I proposed that since we were not seeing anyone else, what if we dated exclusively with more intention? I suggested that it did not necessitate making it official yet, but we should spend more time in person and have those potentially difficult conversations. Previously, while we had met regularly, our interactions were mainly through video calls and phone conversations, with in-person meetings every 2 or 3 weeks. I suggested we meet weekly for activities together. He agreed, and we began to do so. Although my classes concluded in October, the graduation ceremony was scheduled for December, which was a significant milestone for me. I was excited and proud, anticipating graduating. My graduation took place on December 10, but on that day I only received a somewhat generic text from him in the morning. At the end of the day, I called and mentioned that I felt something was off. I had sensed this back when we last met in person on December 5, but did not mention it then. Even though I voiced my concerns, he deflected, citing work, personal goals, and stress as the reasons. On December 11, the following morning, I called to apologize because I felt my previous comment had not been assertive enough and was poorly aimed. To my shock, he replied, "Nah, you're right, I don't think I want to do this anymore." I cannot express the degree of disbelief I felt at that moment. However, I responded firmly, saying, "Not this time, you cannot do this to me over the phone again. Let's meet and discuss what is truly going on." He agreed, and we met that evening. As we conversed, he expressed numerous contradictory feelings. "I don't want to lose you, I love you, you have everything I seek in a relationship, and you look beautiful and being with you makes me want to stay," along with "I'm not sure, I might be afraid of commitment. I'm not comfortable with us meeting weekly, maybe I fell for you out of loneliness. I want to focus on my own goals and I might be immature." I sat there utterly confused. Late into the evening, we decided to take a break to calm down, as I was crying heavily and he was also not in a good emotional state. We met again a few days later on December 14, and things began to escalate negatively. He requested more time, saying he felt overwhelmed and wanted to avoid making any rash or emotional decisions, given all that was happening in his life. He asked for time until February, and I agreed under certain conditions, the most significant being that we would have honest and sometimes difficult conversations and would not date or pursue other relationships during this period. He consented, but I must mention some new points that arose during our discussion that day. Once again, he stated, "I'm afraid of commitment. I'm pessimistic due to my relationship with my mother and my upbringing, and made justifications such as 'you're gaining weight.' After my classes ended, I was not consistently going to the gym due to high levels of stress and work commitments. He said, 'Your family has health issues and a history of obesity,' and expressed dislike for my friends even though he hadn't met any of them. 'You have excessively high expectations,' he said. 'I don't want to hurt you, and I cannot do this to you. I don't want to waste your time.' He admitted he might be emotionally unavailable and concluded with, 'It was easier, and I was more sure about asking the other girl, the one he friend-zoned me for, to be my girlfriend. Even though it ended poorly with her, I felt more certain about her and had better chemistry.' It is important to recall that he made the comment regarding needing to choose between the two relationships back in February, and he confessed that my need to leave our third date after our intimate moment was decisive in his choice. I recognize it was my fault for accepting this time he asked for. I had a rough holiday season, and despite his commitment to message me on both Christmas and New Year's, I tried to prepare myself so that when we reconvene, we could rectify our relationship. During this break, I learned about attachment styles and noted key issues that could be addressed to improve our connection. Everything pointed towards him being a fearful avoidant. His family history with a father who left for another woman yet provided some financial support but remained emotionally absent, as well as his cold upbringing with a mother, aligned with his actions and comments about fear of commitment. He once remarked, "Look at me, a 37-year-old man without a relationship. I don't want to end up like my father's." As I was not feeling well emotionally, I reached out to him on January 13 of this year, suggesting it was time to reconnect and engage in those essential conversations. I expressed I was no longer willing to wait until February. He replied he had already made a decision. Once again, I insisted, no, we agreed on this time to calm down and talk, not to make one-sided decisions. However, it was my shortcoming and there was nothing I could do. He indicated he was afraid of hurting me and reiterated that he didn't feel chemistry anymore. Nevertheless, he suggested we remain friends. I had to refuse. I communicated that, at least in the short term, it was not a viable option. Maintaining a friendship would not be healthy for either of us. He appeared emotionally numb and disconnected, but I accepted the reality, and thus I regard it as a breakup and have been grappling with that fact. Recently, I discovered that by March 9, he was already dating another woman and attended a friend's baby shower with her. This was the same man who less than 2 months prior had declared himself emotionally unavailable. I understand that sometimes appearances can be deceiving, but it does not add up to me. I acknowledge that while I do not harbor resentment, it is intriguing that he claimed his attraction for me was waning due to my weight, while the new woman he is dating is also overweight. She is attractive, don't get me wrong, yet she is not slim. Since January, following the official breakup, I have embarked on a profound healing journey. I have learned a lot about how attachment styles function, and before anyone labels me as anxiously attached, my therapist clarified that even individuals with secure attachments, which I thought I had, can exhibit anxious behaviors in a relationship with someone avoidant. My therapist has been instrumental in aiding me through each phase of my recovery. In a similar fashion to my understanding of his attachment style, she guided me to compare our profiles. I, which might sound amusing, utilize ChatGPT to analyze areas of our profiles, such as professional paths, education, family background, styles, etc. Despite my effort to keep it neutral and truthful, ChatGPT ultimately concluded that I was undervaluing myself and that he was not a suitable match for me. Even with that knowledge and acknowledging my own part in this situation, while recognizing he was not the right person for me, I still do not feel okay. Although I swear that there is no way I would return to him to endure further hurt and forgive another set of unkind behaviors he exhibited, a part of me remains hopeful. I find myself waiting for him to reach out, to recognize his errors, and it is painful. I feel sad and I am frustrated with myself. So how do I let go and move on? Story 3. Diagnosed positive for celiac at 19 but still waiting for confirmation after 2 years. Is my mom's illness taking over my life? I'm terrified of becoming like her, stuck in bed, filled with regret. Can I hold on long enough for answers? I am certain this will be lengthy. I am notorious for overwriting, so I will provide a summary after each paragraph in bold. On my female 19 years old, 18th birthday, the age of majority in my country, and no parent would take me when I was a minor, I made an appointment with a doctor and requested to be tested for celiac disease. I vividly remember the appointment. My doctor was puzzled because I do not have severe stomach issues, no family history of the disease, and I am not underweight. In fact, I am technically classified as mildly overweight. According to peer-reviewed studies, many patients with celiac disease are in fact overweight, but my doctor did not seem to believe that. I suspected I had celiac disease, so when I reached legal adulthood, I scheduled a doctor's appointment to get tested. I do not exhibit the typical symptoms associated with celiac disease. I thought I might have the condition for several reasons. This is just a list of symptoms. Feel free to skip it if you are not interested in medical cases. I am a biology student after all. 1. I have experienced mild, only occasionally severely painful stomach problems since a young age. A coworker suggested I be tested for polycystic ovary syndrome, which she has, but that did not seem to fit. I feel exhausted all the time despite eating relatively healthily, exercising frequently, and getting ample fresh air. 2. I have also struggled with severe insomnia since early childhood, which I read in medical journals could be a symptom of celiac disease. 3. My mother has been unwell my entire life. She has multiple chronic and other serious illnesses that have resulted in her hospitalization, and she has been on long-term disability since I was in elementary school. Many of her various ailments could stem from untreated celiac disease and/or are common comorbid conditions. 4. Does my mother have celiac disease? I do not know, but she cannot be tested because she has not consumed gluten for years as it makes her ill. Eating enough gluten over an extended period for testing would be extremely dangerous for her. This is another reason I suspected that we might both have celiac disease. Gluten makes her sick. 5. Stress onset. My mom recalls that she began to feel ill after a stressful life event. As for me, I have experienced a great deal of stress from a very young age due to a not particularly pleasant home life. Numerous factors could have triggered it. 6. I lost my hunger cues, which also happened to my mom and is a symptom of celiac disease. Sometimes the cues are present and sometimes they disappear. For almost an entire year, I could eat either a lot or very little on a given day without noticing any difference. I understand the importance of nutrition, so I almost always ensure I eat enough, even when my stomach hurts and I have no appetite. Nevertheless, he conducted the blood test. He called me back mildly surprised, saying that I tested positive but only slightly. My levels are not significantly elevated. I require an endoscopy and a duodenal biopsy to confirm the diagnosis. He will refer me to a specialist. That is acceptable. It is not excellent news per se, but it is news. I informed my parents ahead of time that I had gone to the doctor and was expecting the call. I added it to their calendars, but they nonetheless forgot. I took a couple of days to process the information and then I informed them. I was upset but relieved that I might finally have an explanation for my issues. I was hopeful that with an accurate diagnosis, I might avoid falling ill like many people on my mother's side of the family. Her side has numerous chronic illnesses. My test result was positive but not conclusive, so I need other tests from a different doctor. I was frustrated that my parents were indifferent. I feel hopeful that obtaining an early and accurate diagnosis will prevent me from being sick for my entire life, as indicated by my family history. I was instructed to wait for the specialist to email me. Since my mom has seen plenty of specialists, I know the wait can be long. After 6 months, I looked up the doctor myself and called his office. He had never heard of me and did not receive my referral. I contacted my doctor and they apologized for the administrative error. They assured me that they would refer me again, this time for real. 6 months later, I was given an appointment. It was a phone call with the specialist that lasted less than 5 minutes, but by the end of it, I had a procedure date. It is months away, but it is still a date. I am nearly there. Due to extended wait lists and the administrative error, I had to wait a year before I could even schedule an appointment for the necessary procedures, and the day I can finally have it is months away. Throughout this time, I must continue to consume gluten, even though I know it harms me, makes me tired, and prevents me from sleeping. It is also causing me internal damage that I cannot see. The same thing that likely led to my mother's many lifelong problems and I inflicted upon myself every single day. However, I am almost there. I can endure a little longer. It should not hurt me, should it? But as the next semester approaches and my exam schedule is released, you will never guess what day I have an exam. So I called to inquire whether there is a cancellation list I can join in case an appointment opens up. Apparently, the receptionist interpreted this as cancel my appointment. And by the time I received her voicemail, it was too late. I no longer have an appointment and need to schedule a new one for the fall. An unfortunate scheduling conflict and another administrative error have resulted in the procedure being postponed even further. Due to the nature of the diagnostic tests, I need to keep eating gluten the entire time I wait for them, which is essentially poisoning me daily and making me feel unwell. Furthermore, it is likely causing damage to my organs, and the longer it remains untreated, the more likely I am to develop other illnesses, similar to what my mother has encountered. My appointment is in the fall, but I will be turning 20 this summer. In a few months, it will officially have been 2 years since I received my positive blood test, and I still will not know if I have the condition. Yet here I am, poisoning myself every day, and here I am, possibly becoming more like my mother with each passing day. She was only 21 when she first became ill enough to be hospitalized. I could simply stop eating gluten and resign myself to never being diagnosed, but what if celiac disease is not the right condition? What if it is something else and I still end up ill like my mother? By the time my procedure is completed, if it actually happens this time, over 2 years will have passed since my original positive blood test. My mother started being hospitalized when she was only slightly older than I am now. I am terrified of becoming like her. People often say that I am quite fearless because I engage in activities such as bungee jumping and wilderness exploring, but they do not understand that my greatest fear is to become as ill as she is. She was an entirely different person at my age, according to those who knew her. A few years later, she became sick. Now she has no friends, she avoids her family, she seldom leaves the house. She had to leave her job in her 30s because she could no longer manage it physically. She was a banker and I aspire to be a surgeon. If I am like her, I would hardly be able to work before I am forced to stop. I would likely have to quit even earlier as my job is much more demanding both physically and mentally than hers was. Who knows if I would even graduate from school? She was never athletic or fond of the outdoors as I am. She was an artist and someone who preferred to stay inside. She still gets to paint, which brings me joy because it makes her happy. However, I love running, bouldering, hiking, and camping, and she cannot partake in any of those activities. She does not mind because she never liked them even before she became sick, but it would devastate me to be unable to engage in those activities. I fear becoming ill like my mother. If I were to become sick like her, I would likely lose my ability to pursue my hobbies. She lost her career, her friends, her ability to engage in practically everything, and I fear I would face the same fate. She experiences headaches from reading for too long. She spends most of her day in bed. If she manages to take a shower, that task drains her for the entire day. Her illness has undoubtedly contributed to her disastrous marriage, which has been a stay together for the kids' situation since I was in preschool and finally ended when I turned 18. Her illness has undeniably affected my childhood. I had to mature too quickly, effectively raising my younger brother whose first word was my name. I do not harbor hatred for her. I recognize that it is not her fault. She has tried her best my entire life, but because she is unwell, her best is not always good enough. I know that sounds harsh and I do not blame her for any of it, but it is true. My brother and I both turned out slightly troubled. He is currently failing high school and I am attempting to assist him, but I have my own academic responsibilities and neither parent is taking action. When I pleaded with her to do something, she said she could not because she is too fatigued. And you know what? She truly is too tired. Being unwell is extremely challenging. My mother's illness has negatively impacted her marriage, which was already miserable before it ended, though that's not the sole reason. It has also affected her parenting abilities, and while I do not resent her and do not blame her for being sick, my childhood has been less than ideal as a result. My parents would not win any awards for world's best parents, but I do not hate them. They are in difficult situations, and I believe they are doing their best. Being chronically ill is challenging, but so is being married to someone who is sick. While it is not entirely her fault, it is not entirely his fault either, and there is no one to blame except for the illness. If I become sick like her, and each day I feel like I am getting closer, I will lose my career, which I adore, by the way, and I do not think I would marry for fear of ruining that relationship, nor would I have children for fear of passing this affliction on to them. I would be unable to enjoy my hobbies, and I believe I would end my life. I think I would sacrifice many important aspects of my future if I became ill. I would lose so much in my life that I do not believe I could endure it, and I might take my own life. And so yesterday, I contemplated all of this while staring at the ceiling, struggling to fall asleep for the millionth time in my life, and I thought about taking my own life, perhaps for the 10th time overall. But this time I went to the kitchen cabinet and retrieved a combination of medications that I knew could end my life. I placed them on the counter and stared at them while I grabbed a glass of water. I knew what I would write in my suicide note, this perhaps. I even knew which medications I could take that would not be fatal but would make me so ill that I would end up in the hospital, where maybe they would perform the tests and finally determine what is wrong with me. Perhaps I would not have to wait until the fall or even longer, considering the possibility of another administrative error. Yesterday, while contemplating all this, I thought about committing suicide, not for the first time, and actually lined up pills that could be fatal definitely the first time. My mother has many medications that could be lethal in the correct dosage. But I did not take them. I do not want to die. Honestly, I do not want to die. I love school. I have always been intellectually inclined and think biology is fascinating. I consistently make the dean's list each semester, and my friends often roll their eyes at me because I sometimes become enthusiastic about lectures and studying since I truly love what I do. I am somewhat of a prodigy, having assisted in surgical procedures before, and it is the most incredible experience every single time. My friends are amazing and bring so much joy and excitement to my life. I have an internship this summer, which is a fantastic opportunity, hard to obtain and the best in the province, and I am genuinely looking forward to it. I enjoy reading, possess numerous books, and am a nerd who frequently discusses literature. I have a dog whom I love dearly, and since no one else really cares for her, she would be incredibly sad and lonely without me. I do not feel depressed or emotionally numb. I am happy and excited all the time. I know that ending my life would benefit no one. I do not want to die, I just want to live, but I feel as though I am slowly killing myself every day, and I keep telling myself to hold on just a little longer. However, longer keeps extending, and I feel as if the day will never come. When it finally does arrive, they may tell me it is too late and that not only do I have celiac disease, but I have also developed arthritis, hepatitis, or cancer. I almost did it, but I did not follow through. I came close enough to cause significant alarm. I do not want to die truly. I have many aspects of my life that I cherish, but I feel as though this dreadful situation is killing me regardless. I am terrified of losing everything I love, and I see no way to prevent that. I continue telling myself to hang on for a little while longer, but I am unsure how much longer I can endure, and I fear that when I eventually undergo testing, it may be too late and that I will have nothing worth holding on to anymore. I am not going to kill myself. I am not going to kill myself. I will not do it. I do not want to do it. I cannot do it. I have so much to live for. But my goodness, is this not going to kill me in some way regardless? I do not believe I am going to end my life. I am persevering, even though I feel overwhelmed and hopeless at times. Even if no one ever reads this, it was therapeutic to write. I feel somewhat better about everything. Story 4. My dad berated me for being useless and imposed a week of silence, leaving me feeling like a ghost. Despite my straight A's, it's all about my sister. I thought, would anyone care if I disappeared? Now I'm drowning in despair. Can this family ever change? Where do I even start? To be honest, I do not have the best relationship with my father or with anyone at all, and I will explain why. It all began when my younger sister, whom I will refer to as E, was born. All of my parents' attention immediately shifted to the newborn, which made me feel jealous as if they no longer cared about me. My relatives seem indifferent to me as well. We visit our relative's house every year to celebrate her birthday. Even when I feel sick afterward and want to throw up, I am forced to go. I cannot remember ever celebrating any of my birthdays at their house, which is fine because I do not really care about birthdays that much, but it still stings. When my birthday comes, they do not even remember it and tell me to remind them when it is my birthday. It is frustrating. They also become upset when I do not buy anything for their birthdays, asking why I would remember theirs if they do not even remember mine. Returning to the topic of relatives, one day I was feeling extremely unwell and wanted to throw up, so I simply sat quietly. They mistook me for another completely random person. Whenever E interacts with them, they pay attention. But when I attempt to connect with them, they completely ignore me. I feel like a ghost. Anyway, back to my relationship with my father, which I would describe as the worst. He works overseas most of the time, but I do not miss him at all. I feel no attachment to him. When we video chat, E and I ask the exact same questions. What did you eat today? What did you do today? Are you tired? Yet he responds differently. When I ask, he just responds with a nonchalant yeah. But when he asks, he speaks in a cheerful, high-pitched tone. I do not speak to him in a disinterested voice. It is just normal, but the difference is strikingly unfair. Furthermore, whenever E yells or cries, everyone immediately points fingers at me even if I am not present. They still punish me even if I have done nothing wrong. The most disturbing thing my father has done to me is give me the silent treatment for an entire week. I was a teenager at the time, going through changes, and it was a deeply hurtful action. He told everyone in the family to ignore me and not respond to anything I said. It impacted me significantly, especially during a time when I was experiencing mental shifts. I developed severe social anxiety, depression, and suicidal thoughts because of it. Being an older sibling is also challenging because when they do something wrong, it is automatically considered my fault, even if it is a trivial mistake they obviously made and I could not prevent it. I also recall my father being overly touchy with me when I was 12 or 13. I immediately informed my mother about it, but I do not think she took any action. In addition, I despise the fact that my father smokes a significant number of cigarettes daily and drinks every day as well. He becomes very aggressive when he is intoxicated. There was one occasion when he worried my mother by not returning home until 2 a.m. I also dislike him for putting my mother through mental distress and for causing her stress, which has contributed to my insomnia. He yells all night, hurling mean insults at me. How can I sleep when he is shouting? I try to ignore it, but it sometimes gets to me. Additionally, my father claims he can read palms. I do not fully understand it, but he seems to have the ability to see my future. It seems like my father cannot tolerate any damage to his ego. He is also a mama's boy, doing whatever his mother requests immediately, even if she merely complains a little. My grandparents on my father's side treated my mother horribly even before they started dating. I am confused as to why my mother chose to marry him. She has told me that my father hid the fact that he smoked during their early relationship, only revealing it after a year or two. My mother has expressed regret about not heeding her own mother's advice to stay away from my father. I genuinely feel sorry for my mother, considering she has endured emotional abuse for over 2 decades at this point. There was an incident when he picked me up from school and we were taking the bus home. I stood up to ring the bell and prepared to get off, but noticed he was still sitting down instead of standing. I was a bit confused, but I went ahead. After we got off, he yelled at me using really mean insults and even spat on the ground in front of me while saying, "How useless." He claimed he was sick and wanted to ride for a while longer before going home. In my defense, I got off at the stop because it was my usual stop. Additionally, how was I supposed to know he was unwell? He acted completely normal the entire trip. I am not a psychic or telepath. I wish I were, but I am not. Tonight, my mother suggested I video chat with him to talk since it has been a while and said that if you do not forgive him, karma will come back to you. I started shaking. How am I supposed to just forget all the terrible things he has done to me and pretend to have a normal relationship with my father? Trust me, I want that too, but how? How could I ever find it within myself to forgive him? I truly believe our relationship cannot be repaired. He has not apologized or shown any remorse for the physical and emotional abuse he has inflicted over the years. How could I ever forgive him? Please offer some suggestions. She added that you should cherish us before we are gone. You cannot regret later. That is true, but I do not think I will miss my father at all. I might miss my mother from time to time. Family members are supposed to support one another. That is true, but I do not feel as though I belong in my own family. He is not your stepfather. He is your own dad. Sometimes I wonder if I am adopted or something. My parents have always favored E over me. When she receives an award or something, they spoil her completely. But when I achieve a perfect score of 1600 on my SAT and earn straight A's, their response is merely, yeah, we expect nothing less from you. I feel like I am carrying a heavy burden on my shoulders. There are so many expectations from various people. I do not want to let them down, but do I even care anymore? This has made me realize that I truly have no one on my side. I just want one person, just one to trust me, love me, care for me, and give me the motivation to live. I often wonder what terrible things I must have done in past lives to be living such a lonely existence. I am an introvert, so I do not thrive in large crowds, but I still wish for some people to care for me and treat me like a human being. I really feel alone. Sometimes I ponder whether anyone would even care if I decided to end my life. I do not think anyone would. I have been grappling with suicidal thoughts since I was 12, and I will be turning 17 soon. I feel invisible among my friends as well. None of my friends genuinely care about me. I feel like a ghost, not a human being. Is this life truly worth living? Honestly, I do not have much strength left to keep fighting for myself. These days, the suicidal thoughts are flooding my mind 24/7. I am slowly losing hope. I have visited bridges frequently as of late, contemplating, what if I just jump? I have dreams and ambitions like everyone else, but I can no longer hold on. I constantly feel as if I am drowning.